USA. He's also a California state NPC champion, and he is the legend himself, Chris Cormier, directly from China. How are you, Chris?
Thank you, man. Trying to make it happen, brother. I hope you're appreciating this, Tarek.
I am. I am. You're really cute. You are really cute. Let's get down to some videos here. It looks like a young man came out of nowhere to win the cow. Is that correct? Ross
Yes,
Flanigan.
the sauce man. The sauce man came and down goes Burton. Down goes Burton. I feel
So,
like, I mean, it's what I was thinking when I was seeing the pose, them compared was, he was just sharp in a lot of areas. The most muscular that they had side by side with each other. He was a bigger guy, and his proportions and everything uh, was in place a lot better than when I saw Antonio.
I have here some of the footage from desktop bodybuilding. I want to thank Xavius for providing the content. Let's go down pose by pose because Chris, this guy came out of nowhere.
Yes, yeah, it came out of nowhere as far as no one was expecting him to win, and some of those unassuming guys, it's just a sweet story when they do get a victory when no one's expecting him to win.
Did he win? Look at this credible biceps. He's impressive here in the corner, right?
Yes, he has a little bit more lats than Tonio in this pose. He has the front double biceps, utilizing his legs, in the pose, which
Now,
is
did he win that or did Tonio Burton lose this?
well. I mean, I would just I would just always harping on. I'd like to see a little bit more out of his physique, utilizing his physique more in the front double bicep, and I just think you could show more strength. You can't even utilize all. I mean, they both don't really do it that way, but you could utilize more out of your legs if you stand in a different stance instead of just that straight on, uh, no frills type of stance. I
Now
thought
look,
the back double bicep. I thought the back double bicep was better in his position. They have more detail, more overall detail. Glutes were hard. Legs were obviously thicker from the back. Uh, and I just think he just overpowered Tonio here. Uh, you know, Sergio, I was happy to see him placing third. I thought he was closer than second than he was to losing out of third. I thought he beat the USA champion handedly, and I know probably some people thought that he might have been fourth, but I didn't see him slipping uh, past the champion, the USA
so
champion like that.
based on this shot here, he's the most conditioned guy on this back double biceps. Now you
Yes,
can tell that Tonio Burton has a little bit more thickness. Even beef stew, he's got a good back double bicep, but
yeah,
constantly holding a layer of water. And
yeah, but
Here,
Stu.
Sergio right here, the lower back looks a little bit underdeveloped, right?
Well, I think he's just got higher lats. It's not like it's not developed. It comes down. He can actually get a little bit more out of it. I think like he's just crunching in his back to a bicep a little bit more than spreading it out here. But Stu, as you said, he's got the hardness in the back, but the development is missing out of Stu. I just would like to see more actual development. If you take the muscles piece by piece out of Stu's back, you can see that they're underdeveloped.
Hello, can you guys hear me better?
Hear you better now. Hear you
Yeah,
way
better
better
now.
now.
I'm sorry. I apologize. So hopefully you guys can hear me better now. I'm looking at this picture and I'm saying that Ross Flanigan is the most conditioned guy, especially on the back double biceps, which is a pose that's very critical in bodybuilding. Thank you so much, Anthony Sizemore and Jimmy, for the help. Now, look, Chris, if Tonio Burton is more conditioned here, he's winning the shot, right?
I mean, with winning the show last week, you would think that it'd give you an extra little nod when come to this show. Um, but I mean, I had the Sauce Man winning that backdoor bicep.
Okay, we're gonna get Xavier's pretty soon from Desktop Bodybuilding here, coming into the live. We also want to hear what he says. And you know, one thing judges always say: look, he's hitting the poses before anybody.
Right. And
Now,
that's one thing I got to say is that means a lot because when you hit a pose before anyone else, it gives you a chance. Like you can do this at home. If you go in a mirror and you take a front to a bicep and you go close to the mirror, I did this test with Joe Weider himself, and it proved to me that he was big on me hitting my shot quicker than anyone else and leaving it before anyone else. That's what he was always telling me to do when I compete. And you could actually see the muscle fill with blood, get leaner, get cutter. The muscle fibers come in more. You can actually see that for yourself, especially when you're in shape. Do that test for yourself at home,
now
and that'll prove it to
he
you.
his glutes are the best one here, but Tonio Burton, this is not a pose where you're really looking at the definition of the back. You're really looking at the lats. Tonio Burton looks pretty good here. He's just not as lean as Ross Flanigan. I want to welcome Desktop Bodybuilding. Hey, Xavier, we're stealing your content here. We're stealing your rights
Yeah,
here.
that's why he's here.
What's up with
What's
that?
up,
Are
Turk?
you here to file a lawsuit against us?
So
No,
you're taking
absolutely
food off
not.
his table.
No, well, this is courtesy of actually the Muscle Contest Instagram page. So I took it off you, you took it off me. It all works.
Sounds good, Xavier.
Yeah.
I want to Chris said from the beginning, I think Ross Flanigan is winning this show, and he was right. What did you think?
I thought it was really close. So when I was doing my live and basically analyzing this, I had a lot of the first poses. I had Tonio just because of the pop, like to his midsection, like he's got that really bubbly sort of muscle, and I thought the judges would favor that. But as you got into like the ab pose, the way he was posing, I think was a little bit better in some regards than Tonio. Like Tonio was hitting his ab shot and sort of falling forward. He was hitting his side tricep, and his shoulder was forward and not displaying it. And Chris knows all about that. So I
But
think that.
Xavier,
Mm,
but Xavier, I thought when he hit that most muscular, they both hit that same type of most muscular. His abs looked like he was lackluster, in my opinion, for Antonio, as far as the sauce man. That was my opinion, and I just started some imbalances with his shoulders, like really popping out, and it was way more balanced with the sauce man's physique
yeah,
than that.
yeah. I mean, it was such a
That was
tough
my
show because
opinion.
like from a back double bicep, like you look at it and Ross looked so clean. Like his the way the skin laid on the muscle and just his glutes and
Exactly,
hamstrings were just inside out. But also Tony, I was like, is the
exactly.
lighting hurting him a bit? Maybe I was a bit like not sure. I'm like, it's going to be tough to sort of know unless you're there in person. But I had a few people that I knew were there, and they said this is close. So it was. I don't know. It was tough. I had Tonio winning like 5-3 poses, but then I was like, well, if you give Ross the side chest because of the crazy hamstring, the crazy glutes, then you could say it's 4-4, and then maybe you could say the back double to Ross because you look at that there, the back double. Ross is even though his back isn't as big as Tonio's or as thick, it's still just it's pretty. It's like it's amazing the way the skin lays over the muscle.
Xavier, I want to ask
Yeah.
you a question. If Tonio Burton is more conditioned, does he win this show easily?
I mean, I think so, but he still looked in great condition. Like when he pulled his arms back and hit the rear lat and the rear double bicep, I thought the conditioning was. I thought they might say the conditioning is good enough because we saw like Samson Dowda win at the Arnold Classic, and I was like, well, Samson. I don't know how conditioned Samson was there compared to how conditioned Tonio is here. Obviously, Samson's a bigger guy, all that sort of stuff. But I thought that might be the reason why Tonio wins this, but yeah, I can understand why Ross wins because I messaged Ross after prejudging and I said, bro, just wow, like phenomenal. And I said, congrats.
Brother,
But yeah,
yeah, well, I'm not a total fan of Ross the Sauce's hamstring. I'm more of a fan because I thought all that crazy hamstring, as you said, Xavier. I want to see some cuts in that hamstring. I'm not really a I'm not really big on looking at just a big bloated
But
hamstring.
Chris,
I want to see
Chris,
like I thought.
maybe
I'm talking. I'm talking.
no. The angle here,
I'm
Chris.
talking.
Hey
No, no,
Xavier,
no.
you're gonna
Let
have
me
to get
finish
in the
saying what I'm
middle
gonna
here.
say.
You're gonna have to
break it
get in
up,
the
break it
middle
up.
here. There,
No, but I was
there
gonna say, if you look at Sergio's hamstrings, you can see the cords of hamstrings in that side shot. You can see
Yeah.
the cords. There should be definition in that hamstring. I don't want to see a big bloated hamstring from the side. That's not my thing. That's all I
Hmm.
was gonna say. Go ahead.
and Sergio is another guy. He's bigger than all these guys. He's got muscle on the legs. He's got muscle, um, and he looks like the flight. Maybe he was holding water. Chris, if Sergio is in top conditioning, does he take this show?
Oh yes, for sure, for sure. He is the bigger guy, like you said. He has more muscle. When he hits some of these shots, you could see the difference. Stu is not a small guy in his right, and you know, but I've done that before. I've flown from America to Australia within 24 hours, had to get on stage. Uh, um, but I mean, all you got to do is remain calm, keep your uh, hit some shots periodically in the bathroom on your way. Uh, start on your water depletion. Don't eat any carbs on the plane. Just eat just protein. And I think once you get there, just continue working on getting the water out and sustaining getting your physique, ready to get on stage. But just remain calm about it. And I think he may have done some of that. I know he was happy just to be here, type of thing for once. But I just think it's a you could do it. I didn't win that show. I took second to Lee Priest, but you can still do it. You can compete and you can be very competitive. If I think he had more time, he's going to be a lot more grainier. And I thought he looked good. I thought the front double bicep was good. I thought uh, you know, some of his shots, you can see it improving in the legs and the abs, throughout the arms, a little bit thicker. He's still coming up, but I think he did really well considering what he went through.
Well, I'm gonna tell you this. Looking at Ross Flanigan, first of all, the guy has big legs. Okay, in some poses, actually, frontable biceps. You might even say that he has more legs than upper body. That he could grow a little bit more into on his upper body, but he's got legs, and he is the most conditioned guy on stage. I would say Sergio, Tonio, and Beef Stew. They look great, but all of them are not as conditioned as Ross Flanigan. The biggest guy here is Sergio, but he looks to be holding a film of water. Now it's one of those things. Tonio Burton looks great, but he's not he's not beating Ross Flanigan on conditioning. He's not beating Ross Flanigan on muscularity. He might be
Or
beating
size.
Ross Flanigan on lines and shape, but there are two criterias that Ross Flanigan is ahead of Tonio. Because look, in this pose, and Xavier, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, Ross Flanigan looks bigger than Tonio Burton.
Oh yeah, he's a bigger guy. He's a bigger guy for sure. That's what
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think. That's what I'm seeing.
he definitely looks bigger. I was sort of like judging it. I was looking at some photos. The first lot of photos I saw on Flex, that was like slightly to the left of the cameraman. I'm like, Tonio's winning this. And then I saw some video slightly from the right hand side of things, and I was like, Ross is winning this. So it was like somewhere in the middle. So I thought it was close on poses like this because I'm like, Tonio's a bit more bubbly in the upper body, but I'm like, how much does that matter? And it's one of those shows where I really liked it because you had four very different physiques on stage. And sometimes some shows you'll see very similar physiques where it's easier to judge. I actually like the fact that it was harder to judge. And when these four guys all sort of came out, I'm like, they're all phenomenal. And I think that the standard of the top level guys that are competing in these shows, I think it's going to be better this year because you've still got so many big names. Like we've talked about the early shows as being, less competitors and maybe not as high quality, but we're seeing some really high quality guys in these early shows, and I'm sure some are going to go into these later shows. We're going to have like top fives that are, Arnold Classic looking top fives later in the year in Chicago and these other shows.
Well,
Yeah, I think I think we could put that to rest. That that the talent level is down, not as good as
Mm.
the guys in the '90s, all that stuff. I see a rise in talent. I see a rise in people doing shows. I see a rise in everything. I think it's on the upward. Um, uh, I think it's on a uprise as far as talent level in the sport of bodybuilding. What do you think?
well, yeah.
Yeah.
These are the new guys. Let's go into the back double biceps. This is one of the poses that Sergio is definitely holding some water. We needed more separation on his back double biceps, and I think all that water retention might come from the flight. I'm gonna tell you, I think beef stew looks better here than New York. I think
Yep.
Tonio Burton does not look as good as New York, but this guy Ross Flanigan, man, he was the most conditioned guy on stage, and he's not the biggest one, but he's on a lineup where Beef Stew is not 280 pounds, Tonio Burton is not 280 pounds, and the guy who's the biggest one seems to be holding water. So I give him credit. He caught everybody a little bit off, and he was in top shape.
I
Yeah,
think
I
part
think
of
he
it
had a.
is. Sorry, Chris.
I was gonna say, I think he had the best combination of everything. Like you could see some spikes of Sergio up there, the bigger guy, different things like that. Stu had his thing, what he had going on. A lot of hard, grainy front shots. Uh, and then Antonio had, a few shots that he looked the best in. Uh, you know, I liked how the Sauce Man opened up in that side tricep shot there, and Tonio did. Tonio like more like sideways. If you open up that body, you're gonna take up more space on that stage. And right here, this is the shot. The front most muscular. He held his own here. I think he beat Tonio hands down in this shot. The abs and everything. Tonio's not that wide in the clavicle area, and also the abs was not up to standard to where it should be in the most muscular pose. And the legs you see is definitely not holding his own next to the saucepan right there.
Yeah, on this shot, I would have
My,
like Tonio probably fourth on this one because you look at Sergio, he looks pretty conditioned when he's moving, it sort of aligns through the chest. And the way he poses, it's not
yeah,
like his legs are really effective there and they look lean. And then like, you look at Beef Stew, like Stuart Sutherland on the left, he looks huge on this one. He's conditioned. I think he filled out a bit more this week. Maybe not quite as crisp as last weekend. I'm not too sure. It's hard to tell with the lighting, but and like you said, Chris, Tonio's not flexing his abs there, and that's one thing I've said to Tonio in past shows where he sort of let his abs go on most musculars, where he's looking in the mirror, he's probably looking at his shoulders, his chest, and everything being straightened. And it's one thing that a lot of guys forget on that most muscular. They forget to flex the abs because they're looking at everything else. So I think that on this one, like you said, Ross Flanagan, Beef Stew, and probably Sergio are ahead of Tonio on this one particular pose. So
when
yeah, I agree.
when you hit a shot, guys, when you hit a shot at most muscular, it's most muscles in your body flex at one time. When you hit that shot, hit them all at one time. Boom, my legs, everything hits at the same time, and then you won't have an issue with not having your abs flexed or whatever it is. Because if you have it or you don't, you have to show with the judges what you have, and this is what it is.
Mm.
Well, I'm surprised, pleasantly surprised by Ross Flanagan. Chris calls him the sauce man. But um, I'm surprised, guys. I think this guy came in, he did his homework, he was conditioned, and look at the size of those legs, Xavier, Chris. Those are really good legs.
Yeah,
Yes, I
they're
thought
phenomenal.
it's some hard work in that body. That's what it looks like to me.
Now,
Yeah.
Chris, What does he have to do to be a top 10 at the Mr. Olympia? He's got the lower body, he's got the conditioning. Does he have the time to put some mass on top?
Oh yes, he can improve those arms a little bit more. He can do a little bit more in that back double bicep also. Just taking, like I said, the body parts piece by piece, uh, working on different areas of the back at certain times. That's what it's going to help him. And I would get a little bit more definition of those hamstrings, and you can see him right up there fighting with some of the best of them.
Hey,
Xavier,
Chris.
what do you think?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, like, because Chris, you mentioned like the definition of hamstrings. I think from the back and a back double bicep, Ross definitely has it. But you mentioned obviously Sergio from the side. I saw stuff that I'd never seen from Sergio. Like he was hitting that side chest and side tricep, and he had crazy
Oh yeah,
detail in that side hamstring, which I've
yeah,
never seen on Sergio, which was
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
But Ross didn't have that as much from the side. Would you be doing like more like angled, like toes out, sort of like leg curls and things like that to try to bring that in on Ross as well?
Yes, and intensity, intensity, intensity. That's what you got to have when you compete. If you want to try to make some graininess happen in your body, you make the muscle look different just by utilizing more intensity. But I've seen that out of Sergio before, but they're just so much more prominent now. I think the added time just focuses on his body and not worrying about Instagram and who's saying what. I think they did him some good out there in Dubai doing that. And like I said, I've worked with him before. I've seen all that stuff in him, and just everything was way more prominent as far as those. For this, I would like to see him use less time rubbing on his legs when everyone's in the shot, and then you rubbing your arm up and down, your hand up and down, your hamstring and side leg. They're gonna see it. We all see it. You don't have to point at it, rub on it, and everyone's in their shot already. You're losing time, and I thought Sandy Williamson was taking him out of the shot a little bit too soon. If we can go there a little bit, like I'd like to see the guys hold their pose a little bit more, and you can get a better look. It was like every time they got in the shot, it was like relax and go into another shot. Like we got to hold that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think for the men's open, we can give the guys a little bit more time. I know, obviously, like Tarek, like how these shows are. They're stacked. There's so many competitors, like in the amateur divisions at these shows and whatnot as well. So you've got to move everyone on pretty quick. And I do like a quick, efficient show, but I think we could have maybe done some more comparisons at finals. And I thought for that reason, I thought, well, maybe Tonio, because the consensus in on my lives, and I
You
put up
see
a
this shot
poll.
right here?
Yeah,
Yeah, front last spread. He was beating Tony in a lot of shots. I
yeah.
thought it would have been bad if he.
You know,
I thought it would have been bad if he didn't win. That's what I thought.
Mm.
well, I gotta be honest. This guy is beating Tonio in quite a few poses. And look, in this front double biceps, he's got bigger legs. He looks big on top. Maybe he could be a little bit more filled up on top. But this guy is good. I mean, we just didn't know him. We just didn't put any hype on his name. But the reality is, he came in, and it looks clear to me he was the better bodybuilder at the California State Championships.
Yes, for sure,
Yeah,
for sure. He won
yeah.
it. He won the fair and square, and he has the most attributes going in his favor. You see him leaning over, hitting that front lat spread. You can see he's the wider frame guy here, out of him, Antonio. And the sauce man did it, man. You can't take it from him.
And look,
He
Chris,
did
you're
it.
talking about his hamstrings. I mean, the guy got hamstrings.
Yeah, he got hamstrings. I just want to see more cuts, Tarek. Come on,
But I
rejoin.
mean, he's got the cut on the
Open up
glute
your,
right
open up
there.
your. Yeah, I'm talking about the hammies. I'm talking about the stuff that Sergio was showing. If he had that, you'd be way more wild in this photo than just just watching the belly like that.
And I,
So
I think
whatever
when they
that's what. Go ahead.
I think when they called both of them here, they're like, okay, it's between you two guys, and I think that's when he took it away from Tonio Burton. Don't you guys think?
Yep, for sure. He's a bit. He's
I
just
think so.
bigger and got more going on, man. He's more. Look at the as his body flows down into the feet, it gets lesser and less impressive on Antonio.
Do you guys think that overall, like my opinion is that these guys, second to fourth, were all in great condition. But I just think that Ross was like another level in terms of conditioning, but almost made these guys look like they were a little bit off. But I think Sergio was like all-time best or close to all-time best conditioning. Was there a little bit of water maybe in that upper body and back? Yeah, maybe. But I think he's still in great condition. Stu Sutherland, I think, was in great condition. And Tonio was still in great condition. I think just Ross was just like probably the leanest, most conditioned guy we've seen this year and maybe all of the past 1.5, 2 years on stage in the IFBB Pro League. But I don't know if that's the factor, but what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think everyone had a little bit of something, had one or two factors that was in their favor over the other four out of the top four, but uh, the overall, the overall head to toe at this point in time in this show, uh, Ross the Sauce Man, and I think Tonio, he can't help, hang his head. It's not easy to come from a show last week, come in this show and duplicate that or get better. I know he thought he was better. He said he was 5 pounds heavier, but 5 pounds heavier, that's not always a better thing 6 days later.
Was that Tony who was 5 pounds heavier?
That's what he said in his interview. That's what I
Okay, yeah.
thought.
Well, maybe he should have been 5 pounds lighter. Maybe use the same strategy as the New York Pro.
Yeah, that would have been better than heavier, I think. Especially when you're not a huge guy. I think you need to do that. And but he can be better. He's a great bodybuilder, Tonio. He can even be better than this. And I think, just using the same type of thing that Dexter did, but Dexter was grainy every time. He didn't have a show where he came in just trying to be heavier in the next show and trying to be heavier in the next show. He stayed on his game, stayed doing what he does. That's what made Dexter great. I told
I,
Tonio he needs to run on that same type of mindset as Dexter had.
I'm gonna tell you one thing. On the lat spread, Ross Flanigan here. This is one of the poses that he needs to work on
That he
immediately
lost,
because
yeah. He lost this for sure. This one, when I saw this shot,
hey
Terrence,
man,
I thought there's no way he can win.
can I finish here? I'm gonna mute your ass, okay? So
Hey, you better not use that type of language on this thing. We're gonna get cut off. Go
let
ahead.
me so Xavier. You so on the on the on the back lat spread, it's a pose where we're not really seeing the detail on the back. Antonio here is beating him convincingly, despite the fact that he's got the striated glutes. I think that's the pose that Ross Flanigan should work the most between now and the Olympia.
I agree 100%. This is the pose
And
where
what
I thought this was the reason why Tonio would actually win because I'm like, I actually want to ask you, Terry. You're obviously like a judge that judges tons of these shows. But when a guy wins a pose really
Eric,
convincingly like this, would this make you maybe like, even if a guy wins more poses, like just say Ross wins more poses overall, but Tonio wipes him on the rear lat spread, would you have a guy maybe that
no.
wins less poses overall beat a guy like Ross? Just say if it was a bit closer, maybe.
So Xavier, that's a really good question. It's not only who beats the other competitor in more poses. It's also the difference in which you have beaten somebody, right?
Yeah.
So right
Hey,
here, you could say that Tonio Burton is a 9, and you could say that Ross Flanigan is a 6. So now we have a difference of 3 points. But then you have a combination of poses where Ross Flanigan makes up that difference. In addition to
let me
that, peop- hey, can I just finish? You have the transitions, right? A guy can hit all the poses really beautifully. But if on the transitions, his abdominal section is coming out, that's also going to be marked down because that's bodybuilding. Your presentation counts from beginning to the end. So a lot of times people go in the internet and they just compare poses, right? It's a lot more than that. Is the difference between poses is how you transition. And we're going to look at some of the transitions and see who's controlling the abdominal
oh,
section. That's also
keep
important.
him in his pose. Keep him in his pose real quick. I want to dissect his pose. If you look at Ross the Sauce Man, he is on two tippy toes in the rear lat spread. Why is that?
Mm.
Why would anyone put both their heels up in the air on their rear lat spread? That's taken away, probably taken away from the lat spread itself. as you see, Tonio is doing it perfectly. He's got the right uh, uh, balance on both feet. As far as he's got more weight on the left foot than the right foot. That's what you want to do. This guy is so concentrated on those glutes that he can't even get anything out of his back or the hamstrings or everything. You're on two tippy toes.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, good point. Yeah, and he's also got his
Tippy
head down a
toes.
little bit as well. Like Ross has his head sort of over a bit. And like
Yeah,
when I used to teach posing,
exactly.
I'd say people, I'd like look diagonally up a little bit, like so your shoulders pull out more and everything opens up. And Chris, like that's a good point. Like I didn't even notice that he's on both toes. But yeah, he's probably taking away a little
That's
bit and crouching down a bit and makes himself look shorter than Tonio here, which he actually isn't shorter than him.
Yeah,
that's
no,
why
that's a
they
good
pay me the big bucks.
that's a
Why they
good
pay me the big bucks.
observation. Good
Thank
observation,
you.
Chris. Now we're moving on to the side triceps. You're the only guy in America that doesn't think he has hamstrings, but we're gonna ignore
I
that.
didn't say you didn't have hamstring.
You just said the guy
I
doesn't
didn't
have
say.
hamstrings.
I didn't say. I said I'm more of a fan
I
of
mean,
lines and
let me get
definition.
here. Let me get here somebody one
He's
of the
this Ross
comments.
the Sauce Man. He's
Okay.
Ross the Sauce Man.
Right here, right
He
here.
could he could do that.
Chopsticks. Chris didn't see how shredded those hams were on Ross. Put down the joint. There's no joint to
Okay,
chine.
okay. Why don't you get on stage and do what I did before you try to say anything about it? Don't even mention my name in the comments unless
Take
you
off
did
your
that.
shirt. Take off your shirt.
Yeah,
Uh,
take off your shirt. Say
Now
that.
it's a back double biceps between the two of them right here. Hold on, guys.
Oh, it's gone to the next
I got,
video.
I don't want to. Oh, there you go. You got to make that money, huh?
I'm trying to get the sponsors. I'm trying to get the
Yeah.
sponsors for Xavier's as well. If we're stealing
And
his
then that pose,
content,
but listen, also when you hit that side chest, like really make a pose out of that instead of just going like just sticking your arm out and turn around. Like I would get something out of those abs and that he was in a good position, but I would have said and hit that shot and got some definition out of it. And then right here, like you say, I wouldn't be on two toes in that shot. And I never
Mm.
said in the comments that he don't have good hamstring. I'm saying I'd like to see more striations or lines. They're not striations, it's separations, not even striations when you hit a side chest or something like that from the side. It's not
well,
that.
I gotta give this guy a lot of credit. I think he did his homework. I think he delivered. I am glad that he's going to the Olympia. And you know, it's awesome because you know, before the show was happening, we were
That's
talking
good.
about three names. We were talking about Beef Stew, Tonio Burton, and Sergio Oliva Jr. And here comes this guy, and he brings the sauce.
That's right. Sauced him up. Saucy, saucy.
Now,
There's
And
so
I'm
many
out
things
here
you
in
can use in
China, man.
bodybuilding with sauce.
Hey.
hey,
That's
side
sauce.
chest is
No,
his best
that's
pose.
a juice. Well, I was saying, like when you come out of that side chest, like I would make more out of that shot, right?
I gotta
The next
tell you,
one,
this is his
Oh
best
yeah, that was
pose.
good. Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
good.
look,
yeah, and he's using his body. Look how he turns and use the both of those shoulders in the shot, and it's not like a big clump of shoulder like you see Antonio. It's more. It's a evenly balanced muscle separation and development throughout the body. That stands out way
Chris.
more to me than just that shoulder.
Now, Chris,
Yeah.
would he angle a little bit more the leg um,
Yes, he should.
to be
Yes.
a little bit more squared to the judges, the side legs,
Yeah.
so we could see more,
Yes.
especially the
Yeah.
judges on the right side. They're probably missing some of the glute striation because he's
Right.
angled to the left side. If he completely turns and he's square to the judges, I think this would be a better pose. You can see Antonio Burton, he's not creating any angle, and Ross Flanigan is. And I think with his upper pose is gorgeous, beautiful. But I think he just needs to angle those legs a little bit more square,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's gonna be his best pose.
Antonio can get a little bit more chest development and size, but yeah, if he can angle his legs, actually, you know, parallel to the stage, that's the when you're getting the most out of a pose. That's when you really understanding the art of posing.
Now,
Mm.
I have a question for both of you guys. Has this guy competed as a pro before? Have you guys seen him on stage before?
Yeah, Ross Flanigan competed last year, so he did. I'm not sure what shows it was. It was early shows last year, and he missed his mark. Like he missed his peak. And from what I heard, he like things illegal out there in LA, and he did a little bit too much of some gummies. I don't know if it was the night before or 2 nights before, and yeah, he sort of messed it right up, and he's the guy
Yeah.
that does that. So he sort of
That would-
ruined his last
oh,
minute prep, and he wasn't
and people.
he just wasn't his best. Like you could tell, he just missed the peak. He just completely sort of ruined his look. But he just when he was coming into this one, I'm like, as long as he doesn't mess it up at the end again, he's going to be really good in that top four. But I wasn't expecting a win, that's for sure. I'm so intrigued to see what he looks like next week against Ian Valier because Tonio Burton just won with New York. I think he still looks phenomenal here, and Ross beat him. And we had people talking, like Jose Raymond said on Musket Development last week with Ron Harris. He said that he thinks at worst Tonio Burton was going to be a first call out guy at the Olympia, which I didn't necessarily agree with. I thought Tonio probably maybe top 10.
Who
No,
said that?
I
Who
don't.
said
I,
that?
I don't
Jose
think so.
Jose Raymond.
I don't think so. He
No,
got
I
some
don't
more
think so
work to
either.
do, and Sauce Man can get more out of this pose if he put that left foot down and really get a lot out of the other foot by really bringing that heel off the ground a lot more. That's gonna give you way more shape and utilization out of your quads and legs from the back. I mean, hamstrings and calves from the back.
Yeah, it
So
was a crazy
that's
show.
well, yeah,
I'm
but the
not quite
cow, man,
sure.
the cow was a good show, man. And so it was a great competition, and the guys look great. Uh, I was really happy to see that. That's pretty cool to see, all the way from Shaman City, China,
That's good, Chris. I
all the
can't
way.
believe the Chinese are paying you any money, but that's okay. We'll move along. Um, Co-
Let's not talk about China any kind of way,
Xavier,
shape, or
only
form,
only
especially when I'm
only
over
in
here.
America a guy like
Especially when
Chris
I'm
can get paid in China.
hey,
China
especially when I'm over here in China.
China
Let's
is
not even say
murdering
that.
on China is murdering on
Hey,
taxes, and Chris Cormier is there taking their money.
don't.
You're really a
Would you?
patriot, Chris.
Man, I'm about to mute you. I need a mute button. I'm about to go. I got to go to work anyway, brother.
Well, I gotta thank you guys. Xavier, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the content. I want to congratulate this young man. I did not know him. I have never met him personally, but I think he's got to be over the moon right now because Ross Flanigan shocks the bodybuilding world, and he comes down to Los Angeles, California, and beats the favorites, Tonio Burton, Beef
Eh,
Stew, and Sergio Oliva Jr. Nobody had this guy on the radar, and he comes in, peeled, big legs, good posing, and he's going to the Mr. Olympia. Man,
And
congratulations. Great job. Xavier,
yeah, he
thank you
looked
so
great.
much. Give me your final thoughts on Ross Flanigan. How good is this guy, and can he make some move in the top 10 at the Olympia?
Thanks
I
so
think
much,
he can
Derek. I
make some
appreciate you
moves in the
having me on.
top 10.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think you
so.
can too. Like,
Eh,
honestly, I'd predict him top 10 for sure at this year's Olympia, just because we know the condition's going to be there. As long as he doesn't mess it up or anything at the end, and he brings this sort of package with maybe a little bit extra, like you said, from the back. If he can bring that back in a little bit more, maybe like his chest looks great in the side chest. If he can add just a little bit more thickness there as well, it will just complete his physique so well that he's going to be a guy that's just climbing up the pro ranks. And yeah, I'm so impressed. I think that he's top 10 at this year's Olympia, in my opinion.
Okay,
and he can make your
Chris,
food taste good. And he can make
Chris,
your
Mm,
food taste good with all his sauce. He
Xavier
yeah,
is
got a
just
good
exactly.
sauce
getting a
business.
full, Xavier is getting a full box of supply of sauce, getting him in the
Yeah,
top 10 at the
I
Olympia.
want some. I want some too. I like to make food taste good.
Hey,
It'd be like
Chris,
$200 to ship out here.
Chris, thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining us from China. Thank you for your detailed input. I'm sure if he works some of the poses with you, this guy can be even more of a threat. Congratulations
Holla at me.
to Ross
Holla
Flanigan.
at me.
My name is Tarek El Gindi with the iconic British man Xavier from Desktop Bodybuilding.
Whoa.
If you don't
And the
subscribe to
real deal.
Desktop Bodybuilding, your life is going to be miserable. And with the legend himself, Chris Cormier, we will see you next time.
Ladies and gentlemen,